Canada is known for its vast, beautiful landscapes, but hidden within its serene countryside are some of the most terrifying cemeteries you'll ever visit. From restless spirits to eerie apparitions, these haunted burial grounds hold secrets that may never be laid to rest. Join us as we uncover the top 15 scariest cemeteries in Canada, places where the dead don't always stay silent. 1. Fairfield Cemetery, Quebec. Tucked away in the remote outskirts of rural Quebec, Fairfield Cemetery is a place forgotten by time, and some say cursed by it. Overgrown and neglected, this burial ground exudes an eerie silence that unsettles even the bravest visitors. The tombstones, weathered and crumbling, are barely visible beneath the creeping vines and moss, but it's what you can't see that strikes fear in those who dare enter. Many claim to have heard disembodied whispers while walking between the graves, as though the spirits of the long departed are still trying to communicate. Perhaps the most chilling tale comes from those who report seeing shadowy figures lurking behind the trees, only to disappear into thin air. Locals say these are the spirits of the restless dead, forever bound to the cemetery, doomed to wander the grounds in search of peace they never found in life. If you visit after dark, beware. Some visitors have said the spirits of Fairfield Cemetery might follow you home. 2. Cataraqui Cemetery, Ontario. Cataraqui Cemetery in Kingston, Ontario, is more than just a final resting place for some of Canada's most notable historical figures. It's also home to spirits that refuse to be forgotten. Established in 1850, this cemetery is renowned for its majestic monuments and beautiful landscape. But beneath this serene exterior lies a darker, more haunting reality. For years, visitors have reported seeing ghostly apparitions, wandering aimlessly among the towering gravestones. Some even say they've encountered a spectral figure believed to be Sir John A. Macdonald, Canada's first Prime Minister, whose grave is located here. Others speak of hearing the faint echoes of voices when no one else is around, or feeling a cold hand brush their skin, as if an unseen presence is trying to make contact. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to Cataraqui for years, intrigued by reports of sudden drops in temperature, mysterious orbs, and unexplainable noises. If you visit, pay close attention to the stillness. It's often in the quiet moments that the spirits of Cataraqui make themselves known. 3. Camp Hill Cemetery, Nova Scotia. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, Camp Hill Cemetery is a haunting reminder of the city's tragic past. Established in 1844, this cemetery is the final resting place for many victims of the devastating Halifax explosion of 1917, one of the largest man-made explosions in history. Among the graves are those of men, women, and children who perished in the blast, and some say their spirits have never truly left. Visitors often report a heavy, oppressive atmosphere, as if the sorrow and devastation of that day still linger in the air. The most infamous tale from Camp Hill involves a ghostly figure of a woman dressed in a torn, old-fashioned gown. Witnesses describe her wandering between the graves, her face pale and sorrowful. Some believe she's searching for her lost child, a victim of the explosion, while others think she's a nurse who died while tending to the injured. Paranormal investigators have captured strange audio recordings in this cemetery, including unexplained cries and whispers. If you visit at night, you might just hear the echoes of the past calling out to you. 4. Mount Royal Cemetery, Quebec. Mount Royal Cemetery sits atop Montreal's famous mountain, offering a picturesque view of the city below. But as beautiful as it is during the day, Mount Royal transforms into a place of eerie silence and ghostly activity when the sun sets. Established in 1852, this cemetery has seen countless burials over the years, and it seems not all of its residents have moved on. Visitors frequently report seeing strange lights flickering between the trees at dusk with no discernible source. Some have encountered ghostly figures, barely visible through the mist that often settles over the cemetery at twilight. One of the most chilling stories comes from those who claim to have seen a young girl in a white dress, wandering among the graves with a lost, vacant expression. When approached, she vanishes without a trace. Paranormal investigators have found strong evidence of supernatural activity here, including cold spots, electromagnetic disturbances, and unexplainable movements on their equipment. If you find yourself walking through Mount Royal Cemetery as night falls, keep your eyes open. You never know who or what might be watching. 5. Old Burying Ground, Nova Scotia. Halifax's Old Burying Ground is one of the oldest cemeteries in Canada, dating back to 1749, and it has seen more than its fair share of tragedy and death. Located in the heart of downtown Halifax, this cemetery is the final resting place for soldiers, sailors, and civilians from a time when disease, war, and misfortune were everyday occurrences. But not all of the souls buried here are at rest. One of the most famous legends associated with the Old Burying Ground is that of a headless soldier, said to wander the cemetery at night in search of his missing head. This tale dates back to the 18th century, when a British officer was decapitated in a tragic accident, and his body was buried in the cemetery. Since then, countless visitors have reported seeing a shadowy, headless figure wandering among the graves, especially on foggy nights. Some even claim to hear the sound of a soldier's boots marching in the distance, though no one is there. The Old Burying Ground is also known for its eerie atmosphere and sudden temperature drops, which have left many visitors feeling unnerved. It's a place where history and the supernatural collide, and where the past refuses to be forgotten. 6. Loyalist Burial Ground, New Brunswick. Hidden in the historic town of St. John, New Brunswick, the Loyalist Burial Ground is a quiet and unassuming cemetery by day. But when the sun sets, it becomes a place where history refuses to stay buried. Established in 1783, the cemetery is the final resting place of British Loyalists who fled to Canada after the American Revolutionary War. For years, visitors have reported strange and unsettling encounters, particularly at night. Shadowy figures have been seen standing among the gravestones, watching in silence before disappearing without a trace. These figures are often believed to be the spirits of the Loyalists, restless in death after being uprooted from their homes. Others report feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as though the spirits themselves are warning them to leave. The cemetery's towering trees cast long, eerie shadows over the ancient graves, amplifying the sense of unease that hangs in the air. Some visitors have even claimed to hear faint whispers carried by the wind, though no one is around. Could it be the voices of those long-departed souls, still yearning for the peace they never found? Step into the Loyalist Burial Ground at your own risk. You may leave with more than just a history lesson. 7. Pioneer Cemetery, British Columbia. In the quiet wilderness of British Columbia lies Pioneer Cemetery, a burial ground that has been largely forgotten by time. This small, unassuming cemetery is nestled within a dense forest, its graves hidden beneath the shadows of towering trees. While it may seem peaceful during the day, visitors at night tell a different story. Pioneer Cemetery is home to more than just the pioneers who were laid to rest here. Many believe that the spirits of those who died under tragic circumstances, such as mining accidents and frontier violence, still linger. Strange phenomena have been reported here for decades, including cold spots, unexplained footsteps, and the sensation of being watched. Some visitors have seen ghostly figures moving among the trees, only to disappear when approached. Perhaps the most unsettling encounters happen when the cemetery is completely silent, when the sounds of nature stop and the air becomes thick with an unspoken tension. Paranormal investigators have captured strange EVP recordings here, including voices that seem to come from another time. If you're brave enough to venture into Pioneer Cemetery after dark, be prepared. You may not be alone. 8. Beechwood Cemetery, Ontario. Beechwood Cemetery in Ottawa is known as Canada's National Cemetery, the final resting place for some of the country's most prominent figures. But beneath its stately, well-kept grounds lies a darker side that not everyone knows about. Since its founding in 1873, Beechwood has been the site of numerous paranormal encounters, especially around the graves of military veterans. Some visitors have reported seeing ghostly soldiers in full uniform, silently marching across the grounds as though still patrolling in death. These apparitions vanish as quickly as they appear, leaving witnesses to wonder if they truly saw something otherworldly. There have also been reports of hearing distant gunshots and the sounds of battle, despite the quiet surroundings. One of the most famous stories involves a spectral figure who is often seen standing by a particular tombstone, dressed in an old-fashioned suit before fading into the night. Paranormal researchers believe that Beechwood is home to residual energy from Canada's war-torn past, with spirits reliving their final moments over and over again. If you walk through the cemetery at night, listen carefully. You might hear the faint sounds of the past echoing through the trees. 9. Hamilton Cemetery, Ontario. Hamilton Cemetery is widely regarded as one of the most haunted locations in all of Ontario, if not Canada. Established in the mid-1800s, this cemetery has seen its fair share of tragedy, and it seems some of the souls buried here aren't content to rest in peace. Visitors frequently report seeing ghostly apparitions, particularly near the older graves. One of the most famous stories involves a woman in a long, flowing dress who is often seen walking along the cemetery's pathways at dusk. She seems to glide effortlessly, as if floating just above the ground. When approached, she vanishes into thin air. Paranormal investigators have also recorded strange phenomena here, including cold spots, disembodied voices, and the sound of footsteps following them, even when no one else is around. One particularly chilling story involves a headstone that is said to move on its own, shifting slightly from day to day as if trying to break free from the earth. Hamilton Cemetery's reputation for the paranormal has drawn ghost hunters from all over, and many leave with more questions than answers. If you're looking for a place where the veil between the living and the dead is thin, Hamilton Cemetery might just be it. Zinterstrasse, John's Anglican Cemetery, Manitoba. Located in Winnipeg, St. John's Anglican Cemetery is one of the oldest cemeteries in Western Canada, and with age comes a wealth of ghost stories. Dating back to the mid-1800s, this cemetery has a long history of strange and unsettling events. Visitors often report feeling an unshakable sense of dread as they walk through the rows of graves, as though they're being watched from the shadows. Some have even claimed to see ghostly figures standing among the tombstones, only to disappear when they get too close. One of the most well-known tales involves the apparition of a man in a black coat who is said to wander the cemetery at night, seemingly searching for something. Witnesses describe him as pale and gaunt, with an expression of deep sorrow. Paranormal investigators have recorded mysterious sounds at St. John's, including faint whispers and unexplained knocking noises that seem to come from beneath the ground. The cemetery's remote location only adds to its eerie atmosphere, and many visitors leave feeling as though they've stepped into another world, a world where the dead aren't quite at rest. 11th. Elmwood Cemetery, New Brunswick. Elmwood Cemetery in Moncton, New Brunswick has been a site of mystery and intrigue for over a century. Established in the late 19th century, this cemetery is home to a number of ghost stories that have persisted through the years. One of the most chilling tales involves a woman in white who is often seen standing near a particular grave, her face obscured by a veil. Witnesses describe her as motionless and silent, as though waiting for something or someone. When approached, she disappears into the mist, leaving behind an eerie feeling of sorrow. Other visitors have reported hearing strange sounds, like faint crying or whispered conversations, when no one else is around. The cemetery is also known for its sudden cold spots, where the temperature drops dramatically for no apparent reason. Paranormal investigators have been drawn to Elmwood for years, intrigued by reports of mysterious lights and shadows that move on their own. If you visit this haunted cemetery, keep an eye out for the woman in white. She may just be watching you from the shadows. 12th. Notre-Dame-des-Neiges Cemetery, Quebec. Nestled on the slopes of Mount Royal in Montreal, Notre de Neiges Cemetery is Canada's largest cemetery, with over 1 million souls resting beneath its vast expanse. But not all of them are at peace. Established in 1854, this cemetery has a long history of paranormal activity, with visitors frequently reporting ghostly encounters. One of the most common sightings is that of a young woman in a long, flowing dress who is often seen wandering among the graves. Witnesses describe her as appearing lost or confused, as though searching for something. When approached, she vanishes into thin air. Some visitors have also reported seeing strange, flickering lights between the trees at night, with no discernible source. Paranormal investigators have captured numerous EVP recordings here, including faint voices and unexplained sounds. The sheer size of the cemetery only adds to its eerie atmosphere, with long rows of graves stretching as far as the eye can see. If you walk through Notre Dame des Neiges at night, be prepared. You may encounter more than just the stillness of the dead. 13. Mount Pleasant Cemetery, Ontario. Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Toronto is one of the city's most famous landmarks, but it's also one of its most haunted. Established in 1876, this cemetery is home to some of Toronto's most notable historical figures, but it's the spirits that still wander the grounds that have captured the public's imagination. Visitors often report seeing ghostly figures moving between the trees, especially at dusk, when the cemetery is cloaked in an eerie fog. One of the most famous sightings involves a man in a dark suit who is often seen standing near a particular grave. Witnesses describe him as tall and thin, with a somber expression, as though mourning someone long lost. When approached, he disappears without a trace. Paranormal investigators have also recorded strange phenomena at Mount Pleasant, including unexplained cold spots and mysterious orbs of light. Some visitors even claim to have heard faint footsteps following them, though no one else is around. Mount Pleasant's combination of beauty and haunting mystery makes it one of Toronto's most fascinating and terrifying cemeteries. 14. Ross Bay Cemetery, British Columbia. Located in Victoria, British Columbia, Ross Bay Cemetery is not only a place of great historical significance but also one of the most haunted cemeteries in Canada. Established in 1872, this cemetery is the final resting place of many of Victoria's early settlers, including Sir James Douglas, the father of British Columbia. But the cemetery's beauty belies a darker side. For decades, visitors have reported seeing ghostly apparitions, particularly near the older graves. One of the most famous sightings involves a woman in a black dress who is often seen standing near a particular grave. Witnesses describe her as pale and gaunt, with an expression of deep sorrow. When approached, she disappears into the mist, leaving behind an eerie feeling of sadness. Some visitors have also reported hearing strange sounds, like faint whispers or distant footsteps, when no one else is around. Paranormal investigators have captured numerous EVP recordings here, including voices that seem to come from another time. Ross Bay Cemetery is a place where history and the supernatural collide, making it one of the most intriguing and terrifying cemeteries in Canada. 15th Fairview Lawn Cemetery, Nova Scotia. Fairview Lawn Cemetery in Halifax, Nova Scotia, is famous for being the resting place of many victims of the tragic sinking of the RMS Titanic. But beyond the historical significance, the cemetery is said to be one of the most haunted in Canada. Established in 1893, Fairview Lawn holds over 120 graves of Titanic passengers, each marked by simple headstones with numbers instead of names for those who couldn't be identified. Visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures dressed in early 20th century clothing, wandering between the rows of graves as if searching for lost loved ones. One of the most famous ghostly tales involves a young boy whose grave is marked with the number 4. Some claim to see a boy standing near his own grave, looking lost and confused before vanishing into thin air. Other paranormal encounters include sudden cold drafts, the sound of distant crying, and strange mists that appear out of nowhere. As you walk among the graves, it's hard to shake the eerie feeling that the souls of those who perished in one of history's greatest maritime disasters are still lingering, unable to find peace. Fairview Lawn Cemetery is not just a place to pay respects, it's a place where the past never truly dies.